It's a fine life carrying the banner. Welcome to MsMojo, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 things Newsies got factually right and wrong. For this list, we'll be looking at the real-life Newsies strike that inspired the iconic 1992 Disney movie, what made it onto the screen, and what we didn't get to see. Number 10. The Newsies were just a bunch of angry kids with no money. Right.
In 1899, the streets of New York City echoed with the voices of Newsies.
Kudos to Disney, the movie sets the stage with a monologue that's pretty accurate.
On every corner you saw them carrying the banner, bringing you the news for a penny a pig.
Like all of the millions of child laborers in the industrial age, the Newsies either came from dirt-poor families, or they were dirt-poor orphans fending for themselves. Even the best of them could only expect to earn about a maximum of 35 cents a day. With that money, they had to pay the lodging fee for the overcrowded boarding houses where Newsies could rent a bunk, scrounge up something to eat, and still have enough money left over to buy their newspapers the next morning. Every penny was desperately needed, and any extra expense was something to be concerned about, to say the least.
Poor orphans and runaways, the Newsies were a ragged army, without a leader.
Number 9. The strike was caused by a sudden price hike. Wrong.
What do you mean, like a strike?
Yeah, like a strike.
The real story behind the strike started a year earlier. In 1898, every paper in New York City raised their distribution prices from 50 to 60 cents for a 100-paper bundle in order to take advantage of reader interest in the Spanish-American War. With lots of juicy headlines, the Newsies didn't have a problem moving the papers, and so no one really had a problem with the increased costs. But by summer of 1899, the war was long over, and sales had slowed down. One by one, the city papers dropped their prices again. Except two, the evening editions of Joseph Pulitzer's New York World and William Randolph Hearst's New York Journal.
Maybe if we got every newsie in New York. But... yeah, well, we organize. Crutchy, you take up a collection.
Swell. Come on,
Get
guys.
all the newsies in New York together.
Jack, this isn't a joke.
And the Newsies, well, they had some feelings about that situation.
Hey, listen! Pulitzer and Hearst have to respect the rights of the working boys of New York!
Number 8. The strike started in Lower Manhattan. Wrong.
Arise and seize the day.
Manhattan always seems to get all the credit for everything, but the Newsies who started the historic strike were actually far away, in Long Island City, Queens. On July 18, 1899, they kicked things off when they mobbed and overturned a New York Journal distribution wagon and demanded a cutback on the bundle prices of the papers.
All right, everyone remain calm.
Let's soak them for crutches!
Within hours, the strike had spread through Queens, but it wouldn't take hold in Brooklyn or Manhattan until the next day. We know that Manhattan likes to think they're the coolest borough around, but in this case, they were late to the party.
We have a fair Brooklynist here.
Number 7. The Newsies published their own strike newspaper. Right.
Power of the press. There's the greatest power of them all.
There's no proof that Joseph Pulitzer ever said the, quote, power of the press is the greatest power of them all to the Newsies directly, but they still picked up a thing or two while they were peddling his papers.
I tell the city how to think. I tell the city how to vote. I shape its future.
Just like their Disney counterparts, the strikers used their own paper to grow the power of their movement. Throughout the strike, the Newsies published several circulars to organize union meetings and rallies, and to speak directly to the public about the reasons for the strike.
The city thrives on child labor. A lot of people make money that way. They're terrified that the Newsies strike will spread.
Good PR is half the battle no matter what the issue is. In the end, the Newsies' media savvy probably played a big part in what success they achieved.
Why not?
What are we gonna do, put that in the newspaper?
No, we'll do better than that. We'll make our own paper.
Number 6. It was a news boys fight. Wrong.
Hiya, boys.
In the back, you lousy little shrimp.
We love the movie's cast of cute boys with killer moves, but that doesn't mean we wouldn't have wanted to see some news girls in the mix. Especially because in real life, there were plenty of them. The bad news is, once the strike got going, most of the Newsies girls turned scab.
Stop soaking the scabs.
What are we supposed to do to the bumps? Kiss them?
Hey, look, any scab I see, I soak 'em. Period.
As a rule, strikebreakers got beat up, but girls were the exception, and they took full advantage of that fact. There was a newswoman who was a minor hero to the cause, though. Annie Kelly was a passionate advocate of the strike, and was widely respected by her fellow newsies. One paper even called Annie, quote, the brick of all women most faithful to the strikers. We only wish we'd seen her on screen.
Newsy or what?
Fellas.
Now.
Blink. No, Jack, just don't.
Number 5. The 1899 strike was a novel idea. Wrong.
What, you out of your mind?
It's a good idea. Jack, I was just joking. We can't strike. We don't have a union.
Yeah, but if we go on strike, then we are a union, right?
The way the guys react in the movie, you'd think no newsie had ever decided to go on strike before. But the truth is that by 1899, it wasn't exactly the revolutionary concept it's made out to be. Newsies hadn't just been on strike before, they'd been on strike a lot. There were organized actions in 1884, 1886, and 1887, as well as one in 1889 that involved the World and the Journal. So why does the 1899 strike get all the love? Well, for one thing, it was able to coordinate newsies from across 5 boroughs of the city. But it also saw some measure of success. History is better at remembering winners, especially if they inspired others to follow in their footsteps. Number 4. All the characters were invented for the movie. Wrong.
Been living at large for some time under the alias of Jack Kelly. What's his real name?
Sullivan. Francis Sullivan.
As much as we love the boys as they were played in the movie, it's even cooler that a bunch of them are based on real leaders of the Newsies strike. According to newspaper stories that covered the historical event, Mush Myers, Boots, Crutchy, and Kid Blink were the names of members of the Manhattan Newsies. While everyone's favorite gambling man, Racetrack Higgins, was named after a newsie leader from Brooklyn.
Come on, it's a rigged deck. They got all the marbles, okay?
What about Spot Conlon, though? Don't worry, Brooklyn fans, he had a real counterpart too. And just like in the movie, he was known for his trademark pink suspenders. Number 3. Jack Kelly was the real leader of the strike. Wrong. Dashing cowboy Jack Kelly is an invention of the silver screen, but just because he's not real doesn't mean there isn't some truth to him. Jack seems to be based more closely on the real-life Kid Blink Belletti, who was demoted to a supporting character in the movie.
They can't do this to me, Jack.
They can do whatever they want. It's their stinking paper.
Like Jack, Kid Blink was an incredibly charismatic leader, and a strong speaker who often acted as the public face of the strike. And also like Jack, Kid Blink got into hot water with his friends when he showed up one day in a fancy new set of clothes, leading the newsies to believe he'd taken a bribe to turn scab.
What's he doing?
But he's dressed like a scabber. Jack?
Sadly, unlike in the movie, the real strike would never recover from their leader's betrayal.
Come on, what are you doing? Hey, what is this? Why do you get them clothes?
Mr. Pulitzer picked them out himself. A special gift to a special new employee.
He sold us out!
Number 2. The Irving Hall rally was the high point of the strike. Right.
If we get violent, it's just playing into their hands.
Hey, look, they're gonna be playing with my hands, all right?
On July 24, 1899, more than 7,000 newsies from the boroughs of New York gathered at Irving Hall for a huge Union rally. It wasn't just them either.
So here's how it is. If we don't act together, then we're nothing. We don't stick together, we're nothing. And if we can't even trust each other, then we're nothing. Tell them, Jack!
By this point, the Newsies had succeeded in gaining some popular support. The rally was sponsored by a New York State senator, and a number of business leaders and politicians showed up to voice their approval of the strike. The stars of the night were the Newsies themselves, though. The Union president used his stage time to urge nonviolent protest, while Annie Kelly, Kid Blink, and Racetrack all gave rousing speeches that were quoted in papers the next day. After that night, nobody could deny that these kids were a force to be reckoned with.
What are you talking about, huh?
Shut up, you've been in a bad mood all day.
I'm in a bad mood.
You get glum and dumb. What's the matter with you? You're in the papers, you're famous.
Okay, I'm so happy the names from Newsies aren't too far from the truth. Before we unveil our top pick, here are a few honorable mentions. Joseph Pulitzer was the sole enemy of the striking Newsies. Wrong. William Randolph Hearst had just as much to do with the strike as Pulitzer.
As newspapermen, he and I would cut each other's throats to get an advantage. But as gentlemen and as businessmen, we often see eye to eye on certain things. Now, if we do it, Hearst and I, if we do it, then the other papers will do it.
The headquarters of the strike. Right. Most of the Newsies strike action did go down at City Hall Park, Manhattan.
Even though we ain't got hats or badges, we're a union just by saying so.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. Number 1. The strike ended with a total victory. Wrong.
Put them in jail is not gonna stop them. That's the power of the press, Joe.
Eventually, the best the Newsies could get was a compromise. The price would stay where it was, but Hearst and Pulitzer agreed that their papers would buy back unsold merchandise at the end of the day in order to prevent the Newsies from eating a loss. It wasn't the result the Newsies had hoped for, but it was still kind of a big deal. These angry kids had managed to make two of the most powerful men in New York listen to them at a time when poor people had almost no public voice.
Sometimes all it takes is a voice. One voice that becomes 100. And then 1,000, unless it's silenced.
It was an important step in the labor movement that would eventually improve the lives of everyone in the United States. That makes them kings of New York to us.
I'm the king of New York!
Do you agree with our picks? Check out this other recent clip from MsMojo. And be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.